Hey guys, it's Warchant TV, and I am joined. This is Gene Williams, publisher of Warchant.com, joined by managing editor Ira Schoffel. And if you're on the website, which you should be, there's a nice story by Ira, a nice long column, Ira. Yeah, you guys see why? You took your time, so I'd rather have quality over quantity. You took your
Yeah,
time. A lot of big happenings with Florida State athletics. Obviously, two just legendary coaches from Florida State stepping down within the past couple weeks. So that's got a lot of people buzzing about what's going on inside athletics, the women's sports programs, and so on. And before I ask you about that, you see above me, hit that thumbs up. That helps people out. We want to get the likes on there. That spreads it out. The more people that like it, the more FSU fans get pushed this video and they get to enjoy the fine content at warchant.com on YouTube. And then also hit that subscribe button. If you're not a subscriber already, you'll see in the bottom, I think it's your bottom right, if you're looking at your TV, you'll see that under Ira, a subscribe button for YouTube. It's free. And it also, it gets you the little, the little bell is on there. You'll be notified when videos like this come out. We have a lot of live shows, several live shows a week, including this spring. Jeff and Tom will be doing a pregame show. And of course, we'll have the happy hour at Corner Pocket Bar and Grill from 5 to 6, and that will be Corey and Jeff over there as well. And I think a few of the staff members will be there, but all the staff members will be at Hotel Indigo that afternoon of the spring game. So come on by. The Hotel Indigo's right over there, right across from the intramural fields, right by Recess and Madison Social. It's right in that same area. So come on by, say hi. They got a great deck overlooking Doak Campbell Stadium. So it's going to be a really fun time. So come out and join us. And Tom and I have a lot of stuff to do after that. So looking forward to it. Well, Ira, big column on warchant.com right now. We got to talk about this a little bit. The two major coaches have both departed. But I think the thing, initially it comes up, you see these two coaches have been here for so long. The immediate reaction is, what is going on? There's obviously they connect the dots going. They're both leaving. There must be some major issue going on with athletics. They're running off women's sports coaches. So that's definitely not the case. And give us kind of a brief summary of what you've been able to discover talking to people around the program.
yeah, and you mentioned it's a long column. I think I'm going to suggest that maybe I get paid by the word, Gene, and I think that might be the best approach for me. But yeah, it's two separate situations, and I think that's why it's really important. I think to kind of go deep into this situation because when Sue Semrau announced she was retiring, so it wasn't totally unexpected, especially the people around the program. When she took a year off during the pandemic to be with her mother who's battling cancer, and it was going to be difficult to travel during the pandemic and spend time with her mother who was going through treatment for cancer. So she took that year off, kind of a sabbatical, came back this past season. And when she came back, she said she wanted to take a different approach. She wanted to delegate more to her staff and take more time she wanted to be able to go visit her mom and spend more time with her family and have a better work-life balance. And that was really difficult. She said she only got to see her mom 2 days during that whole year while she's still recovering from cancer. She's doing well, but she still wants to spend time with her. And she just basically came to the decision where she's 60 years old. She doesn't want to get back into the grind of 24/7 coaching. And so she decided to retire and she's going to move on. It had nothing to do with frustrations with FSU or any kind of disagreements with the athletics department. She just was ready to move on. But when you have Mark Krikorian 8 or 9 days later announced that he's also leaving the FSU athletics department, he's giving up his soccer program. This is a soccer team that's won 3 national titles and just over the last decade, perennial college cup contender, really the best program in college soccer. He announces he's stepping down, and not only stepping down, but not retiring and not going through the FSU administration and not really saying much about the current administration. And then you have the comments from some of the players on social media. So it's just that situation obviously is different. And so that was one big thing to point out, that these are not the two same situations. But that also doesn't mean there aren't topics to discuss when it comes to women's athletics, how FSU funds football, and really the athletics department in general. So there's a lot going on here.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into what went on with Mark Krikorian. I think you're right. I think it's pretty obvious to everybody you talk to that Sue Semrau is just like you said, maybe whether it's burnout or she was ready to move on with a different part of her life, whatever the case was, that really, it is what it is. It's a completely separate issue here. But let's delve into Mark Krikorian a little bit more, because there are a lot of layers to that. And there are some significant things that relate to Florida State athletics there. And first of all, how this happened, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. for Mark Krikorian to completely circumvent the athletics, sports information, and then just send a letter directly to the media about him stepping down. I mean, have you ever seen that happen before?
No, I have not. And I think it speaks to where he was with his frustration. I think it was maybe a subtle move, or maybe not so subtle move, to let people know that this was not a joint agreement, or this was not they're not holding hands and making this announcement. He wanted to let people know on his terms, and the way it all played out, I didn't really get into the column, but it was really unfortunate because Brooke Wyckoff was named Sue Semrau's successor. Also on Tuesday afternoon, she was named Florida State's new women's basketball coach. Mark Krikorian, from what I understand, didn't know that announcement was being made, and the administration did not know Mark Krikorian was sending out his email. So in a span of about 10 minutes, you had Mark Krikorian announcing on his own that he was stepping down, and then FSU announcing Brooke Wyckoff was being hired. So all of the attention that should have been on Brooke Wyckoff being hired, and she's a former player, longtime assistant coach, should have been celebrated. All the attention went to, oh my gosh, what's happening with Mark Krikorian? What's happening to this athletics department? And so, from what I understand, again, he had no idea that was happening. FSU didn't know he was doing it. Efforts have been made, to kind of, smooth that over. It wasn't intentional, but at the end of the day, yeah, FSU knew he was not going to stay. It was a matter of, okay, how are we going to present this? How are we going to let the word get out? And he took it upon himself to announce it himself, which is totally unusual. And again, I think, and then the way the wording of his announcement, where he thanks Dave Hart, Kim Record, the people who brought him in. He thanks Bobby Bowden and Monk Bonasort, two people that really helped him throughout his career, but he doesn't mention anybody in the current administration. Gives you an idea that this wasn't a happy breakup.
Yeah, that was an incredible Tuesday. I mean, it's one of those things in the media where your hair is on fire the entire time, because you got to keep in mind that Tuesday was also pro day.
Right.
You also had a player go in the transfer portal. It was an FSU practice, and then that night it was Florida State baseball.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible. All that stuff happened. Same time, it's unfair to Brooke Wyckoff that she, like you said, she didn't get probably the stage by herself that she should have on that day. Well, Ira, let's talk a little bit some of the statements that have come out. Very interesting in that statement that Mark Krikorian released to the press, where he said it wasn't about money, and we've heard he makes a lot of money for a women's soccer coach, and was given a very lucrative offer to stay. I want to talk about that first, and then some of the players. Emily Madrill and some others put out a statement. I guess the most interesting thing about that is they say that they expressed their disappointment in the circumstances surrounding his departure, which was a little, the wording of that kind of makes you think a little bit too. So, Ira, can you put all that together and kind of give us a backdrop of what was happening? If it wasn't financial, what's the best thing you put your finger on? Why did Mark Krikorian leave like this?
Yeah, and I think it's important to define what does financial mean, because I think FSU's perspective is they already are paying him $450,000 a year, which reportedly is the highest. Soccer contracts aren't as widely disseminated as maybe football contracts, but it's believed to be the highest paid college coach in the country. Anson Durant at North Carolina is a legend. There's some other coaches who probably make a lot of money as well, but it's reportedly the highest paid soccer contract in the country. And they offered him more on top of that. And from what I understand, they were offering more in terms of incentives to some people on his staff. So Florida State felt like they were making a financial commitment. But there's other money that, becomes at play as well in terms of facilities. And, from what we've been told, Mark Krikorian wanted some improvements. He wanted some improvements to the playing surface, to some of the, team's amenities, and also to the stands, and where they get a great crowd at Florida State soccer. And so, he wanted that to be a better environment. For the most part, it's metal bleachers, and it's not necessarily comfortable. So the idea was maybe to make some improvements there. I don't know everything he wanted, but I know that there were several things he wanted. And I think where things really blew up is he felt like he was given some assurances that it was going to happen. And then that changed. At some point they decided, okay, we can't do that, or we can't do that right now, or we have to go about it a different way. And I think that's what led to some of the frustration. And then, and again, these are strong, personalities, powerful people. And I think at some point it got to a point where it really wasn't about salary or anything. I mean, it became a matter of trust and respect. And I think at some point they just couldn't see eye to eye.
now we can get into how this kind of goes to the whole athletic department and what's been going on with Alford now as the athletic director, and kind of we're seeing the changes. And I wonder if it's also a perception thing. Ari, you mentioned some of the things maybe weren't happening that he thought he was assured were going to happen. That's happening at the same time where every single week we're seeing a new release about another support staff member going to Florida State. You're seeing a brand new updated locker room for football. You're hearing all this money that's coming in for football, da 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 da, here and here and here. For a coach that's been by far the most successful coach in the modern era, and he's definitely right up there with Bobby Bowden in terms of what he's been able to accomplish. That's got to be a little frustrating. You're sitting there waiting, and these things aren't happening. You're saying thing after football, but then you get in that argument. Well, football is the one that generates the money for these sports at the same time. So it's a very difficult balance that athletic departments have to, unless you're just cash flush. And there are a few programs that are, but Florida State certainly isn't one of them. When you've got that balance between trying to make football good and also be really good at an all-around sports program, which Florida State has been. Go look at that Directors Cup. It's been unbelievable, the financial resources they have, how consistently good they've been in the Directors Cup for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and really this kind of all goes back, almost 30 years to when Dave Hart came in as athletics director. The vision for Florida State athletics really changed. For a long time, Florida State athletics was football, basketball, baseball, track. There were, a few sports that Florida State really poured a lot of resources into. Facilities were not very good across the complex, across the athletics department, and they made it an agenda to have comprehensive sports excellence. That was something that Dave Hart really pushed. The administration at that time really pushed, and they did it. They were successful in that. They started the soccer program, the softball program. They became very successful in those programs. And as I mentioned in the column, Florida State has retained coaches at an unbelievable level. Florida State has kept great coaches in place for a long time, mostly because they have supported them and poured money into the resources into their programs. The question becomes at some point, at what point now, because things have changed so much and there's so much money in football, and what happens is the programs that are successful in football pour more and more money into football. How do you keep up unless you're doing that as well? And because of that, often funds a lot of these other sports. So at some point you get to I think a lot of universities across the country, this is not unique to Florida State. And you give Florida State credit. During the pandemic, a lot of schools around the country cut non-revenue sports. Florida State did not do that in any case, and they've tried to continue to have success. So I think they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to support these other sports, but also realize that, man, they have to invest in football because football is what funds everything else. So it's a really tough balance, and I think it's a challenge everywhere. It's not unique to Florida State, but right now, in this situation, it kind of blew up.
Yeah, I think this may be the beginning, and we've talked about the revenue gap, some of the financial shortcomings that Florida State has to deal with. This could be kind of the beginning of what we're going to see a little bit. But I guess, so going forward, Ira, what will Florida State athletics look like? Look, it's obvious this administration, whether you go to Peter Collins, Michael Alford, it seems like the boosters, it seems like the direction is going to be definitely ultra focused on football going forward. But I still think they're going to be dedicated to an extent to being an all-around sports program. But I think the days of being top 10 in the Directors Cup could be maybe not really happening that often. So what is this going to look like 5 years from now? Is this going to be just football? Is it going to be football and maybe the other two big sports and maybe like softball? They can, because they're so good at that. Now, I will say it's going to be DEFCON 5 if Lonnie Alameda leaves after the season. All right, so Michael Alford better do what he can to keep her on, because I think you still have to be good. And I think that's a very popular program for a quote-unquote non-revenue sport. But I'm just curious, what are we going to see 3, 4, 5 years down the road if this trend kind of continues where this administration is ultra-focused on football?
Yeah, and that's a good point about Lonnie. And I was going to try to figure out a way to mention softball in the column, but it was already so long. But
that's another column, Ira.
From my understanding, Lonnie Alameda is, they've done a lot of things to take care of her, to keep her happy. From what I understand, and Lonnie Alameda has done a lot of things on her own to go raise funds she's helped raise funds for some of the improvements they've had in her sport. She likes doing that, or at least is willing to do that, where some other coaches aren't willing to do that. So I think that situation's on solid footing. As far as what their emphasis is going forward, I think there's two schools of thought, and I think there's going to be a constant kind of give and take. I think there is a belief that football has to get fixed, And so they have to give Mike Norvell every opportunity to do that. So they're going to pour as much of the available resources into making that happen. And you're seeing it in the additional staff hires they made. And as you said, some of the facilities improvements, and then the football facility that they're building right now, or they're about to announce probably in the next coming months when they're going to break ground on it. So that's has to be priority number one. I don't think the school yet, from my impression, is ready to just say, you know what, we're going to be, whether it's Clemson or some of these other schools who really put everything into football and don't worry about anything else. I don't know that Florida State's ready to get to that level, but I do think they realize the priority has to be football, and then hopefully that gets things going to a point where they can continue to invest in some of these other sports. I don't see Florida State. I don't know that there's an overwhelming appetite right now to kind of cast aside these other sports. I think Florida State still wants to be successful, but I think they want to find a better balance.
Well, it's a really interesting discussion, Ira. Thank you. And again, I encourage everyone to go to warchant.com and read the column. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there, and this is it's a very nuanced and ever evolving topic that we every year or two we may evaluate the way that this is going. So it'll be very interesting to see the next few years in Florida State athletics. Of course, if football starts winning a few more games, it alleviates a lot of these pressures on the other sports, because then it brings in more money, which of course trickles down to all the sports. Well, Ira Schoffel, managing editor at warchant.com. Thank you. Tom Lang, producing behind the scenes. And we'll have plenty more content for you on warchant.com and, of course, right here on our YouTube channel, Warchant TV.